When an employee resigns and leaves your company, it's important that you have a strategic offboarding process that not only walks them through the steps of turning in company owned devices and key cards, but also shows them that you still care about their well being. I'm Skye Schooley, a staff writer with business.com, and today I'm joined by Dr. Sarah Wittman, an assistant professor of management at George Mason University's School of Business, to talk about how you can enhance your offboarding process and improve that transition for departing employees. Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for being here today to talk with me about transitioning employees as they depart from a company. Why is employee offboarding so important?
Employee offboarding, you can think about it as this opposite end of the employee organization relationship life cycle. So you can think about this life cycle begins with recruitment and onboarding, and that's where the majority of the focus is. It grows with the employees as they move in time with the company and generally ends with their departure. So ideally surrounding the offboarding process, you have these physical, emotional, and social signals. We call these rites of passage. And these tell the person and other organizational members that this person is moving from their previous position. And this can happen, imagine you're promoted. Those rites of passage still technically would be ideal to have. But in this case, it's out of the organization that we're talking about. So for employees, this is an opportunity to take stock of who they are, what they are as a professional, what they have learned, how they'll relate to people in organizations they're leaving, as well as think about this is a person who's transitioning oftentimes from one organization to another. And so how they leave one relationship affects how they enter other organizational relationships, just as in personal life. How we leave one relationship affects who we are and how we are relationally in the future. So for organizations, you can think about this as an opportunity to get a pulse for and data on what's going on in the different departments. So if you have a cultural issue and you have a ton of departing employees, this is an opportunity to say, wow, do we have a problem? Or if things are going really well, why is this person leaving? But also, you have people who are staying, and people who leave affect those who are still there. And offboarding tells people how they'll be treated when their relationship with a company ends. It's a strong signal of whether anyone actually believes all of these HR messages that we get that our people are important. Do people stop being important as people as soon as they're on their way out? And so with transitions, and I don't want to belabor the point, but think about transitions as this four-prong movement. It's physical. That's where you leave your desk, you leave the company, you turn in your keys, but it's also psychological, whether you're leaving your identity behind in relationship to that organization. It's behavioral, these routines, and it's also relational.
So, I guess for employers who maybe don't know, what are some standard procedures for an offboarding process? What are some of those steps look like?
So when you think about normal offboarding, it tends to be standard and efficient. You're not treating transitions as the big thing that they are. And so you often have a checklist of, did I get my computer back? Did I get my keys back? Did this person turn in their list of clients? These sorts of things. The offboarding tends to be company focused. And so if you do an exit interview, and oftentimes there isn't even an exit interview, it's aimed at getting getting answers about, well, why are you leaving the company? What is the organization doing well? I mean, imagine you're laying off employees and, in that case, it's not amicable. So you may not even have an opportunity to have an exit interview. But, what might managers do better if you are leaving by choice? And you're doing it in a sense, I don't want to say organizations don't care because they do, they're data points, but they're also doing it because they want to know before it's broadcast to the world on Glassdoor.
Are there any tips you have for how an organization can improve this departure process and create a better transition for the organization, but for the departing employee as well?
I would say think about how you would want to be treated, right? As you're leaving an organization. Yes, the organization, the employer has paid a salary, they've trained the employee. Hopefully, the employee has learned something, but this person has also invested a lot of time and a lot of relational capital and a lot of social capital within the organization. And so, keeping in mind that, especially today, the employee of today is potentially a competitor, a client, a supplier, or maybe even a regulator tomorrow. And thinking about what relationship can I preserve? And can I treat this person as a person who's worthy of potential relationship in the future? And some companies actually embrace the turnover model. So you think about companies like McKinsey or other consulting firms that have high turnover, inevitable turnover, because they have this up or out model, right? And here they embrace this reality. They encourage their employees to do as well. And just like universities, these employers have alumni programs where they encourage their employees to keep in touch. They don't see them, they almost mitigate the threat of, are you going to steal my clients, my employees, etc. But they flip it on its head and they say, what if we treated you as still connected to us? And so you still maintain your connection to the organization, to your ex-colleagues. In a way, it's a little bit, I don't want to say controlled by the organization, but in a sense it is, right? The organization keeps their fingers in that relational pie. But you're also connecting these people with people who have left previously. And so within that network, for example, the ex-Googler community, and this has been more of a grassroots movement, right? But these are ex-Google employees and even current employees who work together to form startups or to angel invest or these different types of things. So you're preserving that social capital that you in part have helped build, and you keep a name for yourself and build goodwill in the process. So in my experience, good offboarding keeps this potential value of an ongoing relationship at its center, saying, people are going to be an ongoing part of our network. Think about it. You have an employee who's been at your organization for a couple of months. They leave. How long is your company on their resume? How long is your company on their LinkedIn? Right? They not only have this network of people that they've linked to, but in a sense, anyone can ask them and say, hey, you were at such and such a company. What were they like? Did they treat you well? Do you still have a relationship with them? They have some sort of this strange credibility where even if they weren't in your organization, 10 years ago that they left, they still can speak on your behalf.
Interesting. So are there any common challenges that maybe come with this process of departing employees and creating that transition process that you're talking about?
Absolutely. One of them is time. Who has time to sit down with someone and say, we're going to make this a really hopefully easy and healthy transition because we're wanting to maintain this really great relationship with you, right? Normally in the day-to-day of business, we're thinking about our bottom line. We're thinking about next week. And we're saying, that's great. All this relational capital and everything else, that might be years in the future affecting me. And so it's hard to change that mindset of the time element, right? So there's that aspect. There's also the emotional element, right? When someone, and this goes for personal relationships too, think about when someone leaves your company, you feel a little bit betrayed, don't you? Right? It's, I wasn't good enough for you. My company wasn't good enough for you, right? My clients weren't good enough for you. You found greener pastures. Ugh. there's a hesitation on the company's part or on HR's part or on colleagues' part to embrace this transition because we hurt, right? Organizing is essentially a very human act. And so working with people, we form emotional bonds, and people leaving us break those relational bonds and those emotional bonds. So there's that aspect of it. But as well, when it's not amicable, there can be a lot of anger, a lot of bitterness on both parts, right? And so there's the time element, but there's also this emotional element of how do we stop seeing 5 minutes from now and start seeing what does this look like, and is there value of this relationship 5 years from now?
So do you have any possible ways to overcome those challenges of just not having enough time and how to manage the emotional aspect of it?
One is planning. I said that most organizations use checklists of, did we walk the employee to the door? Did we take away their computer? Did we take away their keys? Do we have all their contacts? Right? But checklists are useful, and pre-planning is useful because it does remove a lot of those emotional elements and the time aspect. If you're, saying, okay, I have to offboard this employee and there's no plan in place, it's going to be a little bit rougher and not as well done. And if you sit down and you say, okay, what ideally would I like my relationship with this person to look like from an organizational perspective? 5 days from now, 5 months from now, 5 years from now, and who knows, maybe 5 decades from now, depending on who the person is, right? Looking at those things and saying, okay, if I want my relationship to be X, how do I get there? What questions do I need to ask? What relational steps do I need to put in place to make sure that happens? And, companies that have established these alumni networks have really created a powerful synergistic approach to this. How much time do they have to spend saying, okay, how do we create an alumni net? How do we get these people involved and connected to each other? No, many times they launch a platform for ex-employees that they manage, right? When they're having employee get-togethers, they invite ex-employees. And so it does create a system where very little ongoing day-to-day time is needed for that interaction. And on the emotional side too, this planning often removes that. If I have a checklist and I say, this is what my goals are, I'm not feeling very nice about it in this moment, but okay, I at least need to go through these motions. And, when we have our interactions structured like that, even when they're difficult interactions, oftentimes we end up feeling better about ourselves in the process too, because we know that we've done something right and we've treated someone humanely. And it does, again, it sends a signal to other employees who are staying and who may be saying, well, how am I going to be treated? It sends a good signal to them as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you for all that very valuable insight, Sarah. That was actually all that we had for today.
Thank you very much, Skye.